Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Power of Words on Wellness Wednesday. And sometimes I like to have my favorite people back in the studio again. So welcome back, Dr. T. Such a pleasure to have you. And I think I have to have you back here a couple more times now from what I've just heard. The power of words, and we're using the power of words of role models to be able to get the message out there to let you know that you are not alone. We all go through so many different emotions and so many struggles in life. And thank you all for joining us today. And welcome back, Dr. T. I'm so excited to have you here. We have so many different topics to touch upon. We have the athletic aspect, we have the personal aspect, we have the medical aspect. So tell me about how you're feeling today and what are you most excited about? Not about the future, but this moment in time.
In time, yes. Well, thank you for having me back. I love being here and just being able to slow down a little bit and have these deeper conversations because, well, I mean, I'm sure you feel this way. Life is a race. It's always, go to this activity, this activity. So just being able to sit and reflect on meaning and purpose and direction is huge. So I appreciate you for that. So I feel like that's what I'm most excited about today. I've got my Warrior band on today is what I've chosen. Oh yeah, you have Warrior on too. We're matching.
We're aligned.
Yeah, because I feel that sense of, I live with depression and I've been dealing with a depressive episode in the last couple of weeks. And yesterday wore optimism and today I'm wearing Warrior in a sense of like, I'm taking back control of my mood and my, thought patterns and thought reframing. So I'm feeling good today and I'm feeling excited to be here. This couldn't have come at a better time.
I'm so happy. I'm always happy to see you because no matter what, you're always bubbly and excited about things on a daily basis. I think every time I've seen you, I've always seen you in the same mood, which is very refreshing sometimes because I'm not always like that.
Yeah.
I want to go back to, we've had several conversations, but let's talk about where this began for you, the athletic, being an athlete and competing and then having to take a break. Yeah. Tell us that story because it happens so much to young athletes. And how do you find the courage to come back?
Absolutely. Well, I know a lot of people probably can't see this, but my legs are about a mile long in the camera here. So I'm 6'2". I am very much a athlete family, kind of one. And I'm actually the shortest in my family. I have two older brothers who are taller than me, so I'm the shrimp. But yeah, I came from an athletic background. My father played in the NBA, played professional basketball for 13 years. And so it was very much the expectation that, we would all play sports. As soon as any high school, middle school coach saw us walk in a gym, they're like, get on the court right now, drop whatever you're doing. Like, I need you to play center. And so I loved it. Growing up, that was a huge part of my identity as an athlete, as part of an athletic family, as, a champion, as a, survivor, as somebody who would grind and work hard in the gym. All of those things were a huge part of who I was, who my brothers were. So it was not just my own personal identity, but my way of connecting to something bigger than me because it was such a huge theme within my family. So I played basketball and volleyball growing up, mostly basketball, but then switched over to volleyball full time later in high school and then ended up playing volleyball at Princeton University, which was an awesome experience. Literally don't have enough good words to say about that experience and the ability to play Division I, like NCAA Division I volleyball while still being at an institution that really values academics and helps you hold those two pieces together. But it was hard. Like I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. And so moving 3,000 miles across the country is hard in and of itself. And inevitably life starts happening, even, when you're dealing with one challenge that life doesn't say, oh, you have a challenge already. I just won't give you anything else to deal with. That's enough. It's never the case. So, I'm living in New Jersey. I'm balancing, being a college athlete, being an Ivy League student, being a pre-medical student, all these different clubs and things that I was doing to try to stack my resume to get into medical school. And there were kind of two major hits that I had experienced as an athlete. one, a general life hit. My father passed away my first year of college. And I actually didn't get a chance to see him before he passed. I was completely on the other side of the country when that occurred. So that was one thing that happened that was kind of initially pushed me into going into therapy, and I can talk about all of that more later. But the second thing that happened, my first day of preseason, my senior year, we were doing our conditioning tests before we got onto the court. Basically, your vertical jump and your sprint testings to make sure you were working out over the summer. And we were on the last part running shuttles, like run and touch this line and come back 7 times. And the very, very last one, I ran to plant my foot and change directions, and I felt the loudest pop in my body that I've ever felt, the worst pain I've ever felt, dropped to the floor and just grabbed my ankle. And I'm like, what just happened? Like, what is going on? And I touched the back of my ankle, and I don't feel an Achilles tendon there. Like, it just popped out of nowhere. And I'd never had ankle problems before, never had Achilles issues before. It was just a complete freak accident. Like, that's not a common injury that happens to young people. It's typically your, older man, weekend warrior, sits in the office all day and then tries to go play rec basketball, is trying to show off for his friends and ends up tearing his Achilles.
But his young girlfriend.
Exactly. Exactly. But it happened. And so just like that, I went from, this is the pinnacle of my athletic journey. My senior year, just coming off of some all-league awards and had been really successful. And all of a sudden, I can't even walk or put weight on my foot for 2 months. And so the whole season was gone, and I knew I was going to be rehabilitating this injury for at least 6-7 months.
Wow.
It's a really rough injury. Like, I much rather would have broken a bone. That would have been, 4-6 weeks to kind of get better before I can get back on the court. But this, truly, I wasn't able to jump and compete in volleyball again for 6 months.
Wow.
Which was devastating.
How do you manage that? How do you maneuver that? Because it's competitive, and there are new players. There are players that fill in, and with an athlete, for you, it's that's your career.
Yeah.
That's it. That's your next step to once you graduate to wherever you're going and whatever you might want to be. And considering you already had, role models, your dad was in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was miserable for a while, and my mom shares kind of, tongue-in-cheek stories about how I was not the most pleasant person to be around in the days following the injury. But I think what she understood and valued, and what I came to understand more later on, is the importance of feeling it, the importance of being able to look at a situation and say, like, this is awful, like, this is tragic, this is traumatic, because it is. Physical trauma is a trauma on the body and could lead to mental trauma as well.
Yeah.
And, it was important for me to feel it and not to push it down and say, you know what, like, no, I'm just going to put on a happy face, I'm going to smile, and everything's going to be great. Like, I needed those first days, those first weeks to just be sad, because it was a huge loss, and it was a huge grieving process of not just, my goals for the season, but the goals for my athletic career, it ended up being a career-ending injury for me. The goals for where I was going to get to in, athletics, were potentially playing professionally somewhere, winning championships, all of those things were just gone in an instant. And again, going from being so physically fit, that was the peak of my physical fitness, my strength, my jump, like, everything was at its height, to I needed help to just, like, get my backpack on and walk down a hallway. It was an immense change. And so I think that is something that's very important now in my career as a sports medicine doctor, that I do try to impart to the athletes is, this does suck. Like, this is hard. And no one is trying to take that away from you. No one's saying, oh, just put on a brave face and just dust off. And, we'll get to that stage where we're able to look at this a little bit more logically and start putting those action steps into place. But, like, in this moment, like you can feel this is hard. And I think that's important, because a lot of sports culture is like, just grit and bear it and get through, be tough, don't show weakness. And in those immediate moments, I think it's important to allow for the sadness and for the weakness. Because if you push it down, it's going to come out some other ways. Those intense emotions, those intense feelings are going to come out.
Do you think having the tools to express unspoken, because you can't speak about it because the words just don't come out, you're in such a bad place.
Right.
But if you had, and people tiptoe around you, I think, when you're going through something so delicate, it's the rest of your life right now is determined by this injury. Two things I want to talk about here. One is, what was the light at the end of the tunnel, or what was this new path that opened up for you based on the injury, as opposed to if you didn't have the injury, something must have come from that. Right. But secondly, if you had a chance to express these emotions you were feeling, how do you think that would have changed things for you, or would it have?
Right. You know, I consider myself incredibly lucky in a sense that this injury happened when it did in the place that it happened, because, due to, the mental turmoil that I faced after my father passed away, I had already been exposed to therapy. I'd been seeing a therapist and on and off antidepressant medication my sophomore year at Princeton. And so I knew those steps to take in terms of, I was like, okay, I know how to, assess my mood. I know how to assess my mental state and when I need help, and I know what to do and how to seek out that help. And part of that injury process, I feel like as an athlete, other people aren't going through that on your team necessarily, or, maybe it's one or two other people, but they have different injuries. Like, you don't really have somebody who's in that exact same boat as you, and everyone's focused ahead on, okay, the season's coming up soon, or we have this opponent that we're coming against. Like, I just need to lock in on that. And you just don't want to complain or burden people with what you're experiencing. And so having that neutral person that I could speak to, a therapist, to be able to figure out all those things that I just shared. Because I didn't come out right after the injury saying, like, I had this physical trauma, that is a mental trauma, and I need to experience these emotions, and it's temporary. Like, all of that came from talking to a therapist and being able to work through it. And the second thing that helped a lot was one of my assistant coaches at the time was a psychology or sports psychology minor, or had an additional certification or something like that. And so every season he would talk to us about various tools that could be used, like mental tools that could be used to help performance. And so I learned about mindfulness for the first time, like with my team in that setting. And mindfulness, being able to say, okay, this is the current moment and this is going to pass, and not clinging too hard to the current moment. For me, my senior year, that was that sadness, that physical pain, the emotional pain. Being able to just let those things pass through me as opposed to holding on to them was paramount in terms of being able to move through. And so having those experiences, I was already a pre-medical student, so I was already interested in, physical health and mental health. And then had these personal experiences, I all of a sudden had a way to connect to my patients, because I'd been a patient in multiple ways. I'd been a surgical patient as I was getting my Achilles repaired. I had been a mental health patient as I was, talking to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and, managing my medications and things like that. So I was like, I have a new empathy for the people that I'll be working with in my future career. And I have a new way of understanding how we can take these lessons that we're learning in medicine and bring them out into the world that we live in. Me learning mindfulness, a therapeutic technique with my volleyball team outside of a hospital, outside of therapy, like, that was huge. And I think that's a huge reason I was able to go from, this dark hole and this miserable state I was in after this injury to, rehabilitating the injury, getting into top medical schools, starting medical school, less than a year late, 12 months later, and, going through med school, residency, sports medicine fellowship. And I'll actually, almost 10 years to the day, will actually be taking a new position as a sports medicine doctor at the hospital where I got that surgery.
Oh, amazing.
So,
Congratulations.
So it's a awesome full circle moment where I'll be able to go in as somebody with that experience of having been a patient there and understanding not just the physical toll, but the mental toll that it takes to get through an injury like that. And also the mental opportunity that you have to gain new skills that will get you through additional challenges in life. I think that's what's so important to me, and what I hope to do in addition to and beyond just the physical healing that I'll be able to provide for my patients.
No, it's so incredible that did you choose sports medicine? Did you always know that's what you wanted to do, or was there a reason you went into medicine?
Yeah.
Did you always want to be a sports medicine doctor?
It was being a physician was always there. That was definitely an interest of mine from early on. I was a huge nerd growing up. Like people said they didn't know what my face looked like because I always had a book in front of me. So I loved reading. My elementary school science teacher's daughter was my best friend. And so we were just doing science projects and hiking and exploring, going to museums like on the weekends. Like it was just constant science, hanging out in that household. And so between the love for reading and learning and science and, my mom grew up very much impressing the message of like, you need to help others. Like that is very important. And I feel for a lot of families, people of color, people coming from lower income backgrounds, that is just becomes a huge part of your identity as well. Is that
Absolutely.
you help those around you.
That's a path to healing as well.
Oh, yes.
Though helping someone else helps you heal because it makes what you're going through kind of minimizes it in a way because your focus is taken off you and your pain or sorrow, and your focus is on someone else and trying to help them. So I always say helping others is a path to healing. And I think kids need to do that really earlier on in life. And it's really great to see that there's so many, the families and schools do implement that and teach them that.
Right. And there's data, there's evidence behind that. There's
course.
research showing that, being involved in community, giving back is actually beneficial for your mental health.
Yeah. But, really emotionally being involved, so much of what we do is on the surface and you just do it and you go through the moment, but really getting kids interested and invested in people they're helping. That's where the difference happens. And I always say, we start from the age of 7 to 12. That's the most impactful age where you can actually, touch the empathy and the compassion in kids. That's when their compassion is at its peak. So it's the best age to introduce something like that. Just because there's so much we see happening now around us, and I think the pandemic left us with this overload of mental health issues and suicide and things like that. Would you like to talk a little bit about the devastating time and period your family went through with your dad, and how you dealt with that as a teenager? Were you a teenager at the time?
Yeah. So I was, let's see, I think I was 19 when it occurred. So it's funny speaking to this idea of helping others and how that's beneficial. My entire freshman year, I'd been working as the director of fundraising for this international nonprofit that essentially supports different children's clinics all around the globe. And we were specifically raising money to support toiletries and different medications and things like that for a clinic in Costa Rica. And with the goal of several of my classmates and I going down there in May, I think it was in May, at the end of the academic year, to physically bring all of the donations that we got and then also to volunteer in a clinic there. And so it would be a bit of a learning and volunteer sort of experience in clinic. And it had been a huge pinnacle of my year. I talked about it all the time. I was very focused on it, doing a lot of work around that, fundraising and whatnot. And about a month before I was going to go, my father had a heart attack, and he was doing okay following that. And I remember talking to my mom and talking to some family about, what do I do? Like, I want to, come home. I want to see him. I want to, be there with him. And everyone was like, no. Like, he wants you to go. Like, this is important for your career. You've been working on this forever. You can see him after. And there was a lot of back and forth to get to that point. But finally I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And then I'm changed my flight to go from, Costa Rica back to LA, to Costa Rica to Louisiana, where he was with his parents. And I was like, okay, we'll just make this work. And so I really embedded myself in the work in Costa Rica, and it was amazing. It was one of my first experiences being in a clinic space and working with doctors and patients and, organizing a pharmacy closet and doing all of these awesome things with like adorable babies and kids. And it was wonderful. And I just remember my last day in clinic, somebody pops out of the little kitchen area in clinic and says, Tiana, like, there's a phone call for you. And I was like, this is unusual. Like, I don't understand why this would be happening in this way. And again, we were kind of in a rural area in Costa Rica. And so I go to the phone, it's my mom. And she tells me that my dad had passed. And I'm even further than 3,000 miles away because I'm in Costa Rica at this point. And just the immense guilt, I think, was the biggest thing that came in terms of not being able to physically be there and not having seen him before he passed. Which again, there's been a lot of therapy through that to kind of move
The
past that
guilt
guilt.
of maybe you made a bad choice. Was
Yeah.
that what you were thinking,
Yeah.
that you should not have gone, but you were not to know him?
Exactly. And I think what helped a lot, and and talking about it with my mom and therapists and whatnot, is just that you were living your dream, and this is what every parent wants for their child.
Absolutely.
And that was very healing and very important for me to be able to reflect on in the years following that, because it was heavy. It's anytime you lose a loved one, there's never the perfect circumstance, the perfect situation. And this absolutely was awful. And so then the conversation was, where do you go from here? Do you want to leave clinic right now? Do you want to get on a flight? And my mom encouraged me to, stay and finish the trip. And, I was able to get so much healing from what we talked about earlier, just helping other people and being able to dive back into that and leaning on the support of my classmates,
Wow,
my
that
colleagues
must
who were
have
with
been
me.
hard.
It was hard. But it was beautiful in a sense of it was living the dream. And that was an experience that I've continued to talk about for years. It was in my medical school application essay. It's been in almost every interview that I've had since. Just that ability to lose yourself in helping others, and to really feel a sense of autonomy and purpose, no matter what's going on around you. And that's something that's helped me through so much over the last, how old am I? 12 years since that has happened. So that's something that I hold close to my heart as a very painful lesson, but something that's really given me a lot of strength to get through additional challenges in my life.
Wow, that must have been a really tough journey for you. And I've met your mom, and she's such a hero. And I love just being around her energy. She's so incredible. Let's talk a little bit about something different in terms of bonding and expression. Everything we do is emotional intelligence, and the importance as a doctor of emotional intelligence. Right. When you first came on board with us, or when you first got, it was when I spoke at UCLA.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
To the team, yes. Mm-hmm. And you said to me, Deb, I need this as well. We as doctors and nurses need the therapy. What were you thinking, and why were you thinking that this could work for the medical field, for the professionals in medical field, and how could we actually make use of it and implement it?
Absolutely. I mean, burnout is such a huge problem just globally in any job sphere, in parenthood, in so many of the things that we do, that feeling of like you pour and pour and pour for your own cup until it is just completely empty. And medicine is absolutely a field where burnout is rampant.
Yes.
Rates of depression, substance use disorder, suicide are higher in physician populations compared to any other career. It's hard being a physician. It is, you put yourself through decades potentially of school, through hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt sometimes. Yeah. You move from place to place. You don't have much choice in terms of where you go for medical school and for residency. So, and that's just the logistical side, let alone the emotional piece of you walk into work every single day and you're walking into the worst day of somebody else's life. Yeah. And you have to be on 100% of the time for each and every patient that you encounter. And that can be anything from, a cute, smiley, like, well, baby, normal chat, like, cute little baby checkup to, the next patient is a child who can't breathe on their own, can't eat on their own, is, ill, and you're trying to help them manage, and the parents have lost a job and they're trying to get disability income, and like it, and just from one thing to the next, you have 0 minutes in between those two. You just walk out of one room, walk into the next one. Or in a hospital setting where, you're trying, a patient is coding and you're doing chest compressions and giving them medications, they end up passing away. And then literally 2 minutes later, you have to go talk to another family about, someone who's giving birth. Like the emotional
Extreme.
roller coaster that you go through is very extreme. And even in the best of circumstances, which, as you can imagine, I graduated med school in 2020, and my residency in pediatrics was from 2020 to 2023. And we all know what happened during that time.
Yeah.
And so that was incredibly, incredibly intensely difficult. And I actually, during that time, was working with a lot of the like Black physicians and trainees, because that was around the time George Floyd got murdered.
Yes.
And, the Black Lives Matter movement was really ramping up. And so we had all of these things coming at us of like, we're new medical trainees, there's so much racial tension happening in our country. The pandemic is going on. Like, how do we stay adrift in all of this, in this like rageful sea that we are in right now? And I recognize that. And so we worked with, some of the folks to put together this kind of protected day off where we were able to just connect with each other, meet each other face to face, which we hadn't done because of all the social distancing policies, to, talk to mental health professionals, which when is there time to talk to a mental health professional in a doctor's work day? So all of those things were important, but it was a one-off thing. It's happening annually, but again, it's a one day a year sort of thing. And so my big focus and my hope for, what the power of words can do, and, what I hope the medical community can shift into, is more of those small daily moments, the ways that we can use our words. We can use visual symbols like, having warrior, optimism, empathy, right on your wrist, right on your, shirt, on your scrubs, like something that you can serve as a signal to somebody else of, this is what I need more of today, or this is what I want to give out today. That is, I think, something that would absolutely transform not only, your patient-doctor interactions, being able to connect with a patient who may be wearing one of these or who may feel more open to express how they're feeling that day, but also from doctor to doctor, from nurse to nurse, from, CEO to front desk staff. Like, I think that ability to just be able to connect and to recognize that there may be something under the surface that somebody is experiencing is huge. And I think those are the ways in which we can fill that cup that we so commonly are pouring from and emptying out.
Wow, yes. We don't realize, right? We go in to see a doctor with our problem and expect him to show up or her to show up at 100% and, give me the pill and make me better. And not realizing that we keep emptying from their cup each time they see a patient. And I realized that as well. And, but it took me a long time to understand it until we talked so much, and especially during the pandemic. I can't even imagine, being in someone else's shoes, and I'm quite empathetic to be in the doctor's shoes, because you don't know what you're taking home to your family, after leaving a hospital.
Right.
So I just saw it as such a great communication, because it's unspoken, but you're still able to share something really powerful that you're feeling at that moment in time, and you can't talk about it because you really don't have the time to talk about it.
Exactly. And so much of the, history of medicine is around being so kind of buttoned up and, put a mask on and just be professional. And I think what I've appreciated about this generation of physicians, and like kind of my generation, the sort of social media doctors, I guess you can call us, is, we're taking that mask off and being less guarded. We're taking that boundary or that wall out between doctor and patient. And I think that's part of what I've been able to be most effective with my patients, when they don't feel that sense of like power imbalance or hierarchy where they're like, oh, okay, we'll have to, sit up straight, and I can't mention certain things to my doctor because I'm afraid of how they will view me or that they'll judge me. And I'm like, no, like, you're human. I'm a human too. I just spent a lot of time in school, but so I can help you navigate through this thing. But, you have strengths, you have knowledge that I don't have. Like, let's work through this together, and let's, figure this out together. And I think a lot of people react very well to that. They respond well to it, because it is true. There's so much to healing, and there's so much to feeling whole outside of just, here's this medication, here's this, supplement,
This emotional connection that you need to have with people. That's part of the healing as well as a doctor. It depends.
Exactly.
I feel most comfortable when me as a parent, when I take my child to a doctor that's nice and kind and connects.
Yeah.
Even my puppy. I will choose a vet that hugs my puppy.
Right.
I don't want somebody that, she's already freaking out. But anyway,
Exactly.
besides the point.
Exactly. Oh, totally on point. Absolutely on point. So my favorite, I count that as, because my initial training was in pediatrics before sports medicine. And so, I snuggle those newborns like they're mine. And
it makes me feel good as a parent, and I will choose my doctors accordingly.
Right.
So, Dr. T, what's next for you? What else did I want to talk about? Teams, like how do you see that teams need to have this communication between them? And that's what we're trying to implement now, is for sports teams to be able to express themselves, even though they don't have the time. I mean, athletes, what a life they lead, the 4 years that they're in university. It's crazy. So, helping them navigate their emotions and express themselves, but also understanding the emotions of the other teammates. And that can probably help a game, that would probably help support someone else in a game who's probably having a bad day.
Totally. And it's so interesting when you were talking about that and just the busyness of an athlete. I remember, so I'm a current sports medicine fellow physician at UCLA. And when I was seeing one of the athletes, like one of my patients, and talking to them about, different stressors that they were facing. And I gave them a couple of tools on how to kind of reframe their cognitions or how they think about something, and around mindfulness, different small breathing exercises they can do. Because initially I was like, oh, well, we have great therapy services. There's someone you can meet with. And they're like, oh, I just don't have time. I don't have time. And then I chatted and gave them a couple of strategies. And they were like, that was perfect. Like, I just needed a couple of things that I can hold on to and work into my day. And I think that was so powerful to me, because I was like, that's true. Like, not everyone has the time, access, or resources to sit and talk to a therapist for an hour. And I think that puts an onus on us as educators, as physicians, as people in the working with youth, to think about how can we shape this environment to teach these skills and to incorporate skills around emotional intelligence, around mindfulness, around self-awareness of your thoughts and not identifying with negative thoughts, and how there are ways to teach these things, just like, everyone has to learn the Pythagorean theorem, at some point. You learn that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Like, there's certain things that everyone learns. Like, why can't we learn those things around our mental health that will carry us on forever and lead to our overall development and our growth? And I think it works so well in an athletic space, because you need so many of those skills to manage your emotional arousal in a game. And so I feel like it's an easier sell to teams, to coaches, to say, hey, these are skills that your athletes can use to keep themselves balanced during a tense situation, to keep themselves, mindful, and to keep them calm when, the ball is coming to them and there's 3 seconds left on the clock and they have to make this shot, or they're not making it to the championship. And again, those are the skills that they will carry forward truly for the rest of their lives.
Forever. Absolutely. We've been talking to, people in academics. We also have psychiatrists, psychotherapists, therapists on our team, and they're starting to use this as tools for their patients as well. But more importantly, making this something that starts at making the Band Bond initiative, the conversation, emotional intelligence conversation that starts at elementary school, and then to be able to achieve a certain goal, as you graduate to middle school. And by the time you're done with middle school, you already have these tools, because everything's about practice. Practice makes perfect, but that's ingrained in you. It's like, what do they say about Kumon? They make you do math over and over and over again, and then automatically your brain just absorbs it. But teaching you to express your emotions, to focus, to come back to something if you haven't completed it, and make sure you get it done. It's the little things, and then understanding people around you. That's kindness, that's gratitude. There are so many things that come with it.
Exactly. And it's so funny, because I was really focusing on college athlete mental health as, a college student who dealt with mental health issues. And as I was working in that space with Princeton Athletics, a lot of folks say, we really need kids coming to college already knowing and having these skills. So I'm like, okay, great. focus on high school. And
Yeah.
while I was getting a master's in public health, I worked with a school district to build a mental health program and create a curricula around mental health. And, was trying to incorporate these things into the school day. And the feedback I was getting from administrators was like, we really need the kids coming to high school with these skills. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
go to middle school and even
Do
younger.
something about it.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
there's this idea, and it's the same concept in medicine and in public health, that, rather than dealing with a disease or disease process once it's already developed and once it's there, why not prevent it from developing in the first place? And it's the same concept and what I really hope to help have an impact on in my career for both physical and mental health, rather than, doing all of these things that are going to lead to disease, to injury, to mental distress, all these negative thought patterns, all of these negative ways of seeing, the world and the situations and our bodies and our identities. Why can't we start off, 7, 8, 9 years old,
Absolutely.
already having these skills to be able to build ourselves up, to be able to express ourselves, to be able to move through challenging situations, rather than just kind of stumbling through it and developing negative coping mechanisms along the way and just gritting and bearing it and shutting down our emotions and then dealing with what comes out of that 10, 15, 20 years later. So I'm, so in alignment with everything that you're doing, and just really grateful that we've met and, brought the minds together, because what you're doing and what you're bringing to the world is just so immensely needed. And
Thank you.
will have an impact not just on the kids now, but on
The future.
the families 20 years from now, 40 years from now. The generational change that will be able to come from this is immense.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your advice. Thank you for your support, and always bringing your skills and your intelligence and your wisdom to the power of words. And thank you for the power of your words. And I'm sure this won't be the last conversation with you, because I know you're off on a new path, and we're going to miss you here in LA. But I have to say to you that I've said this for the last 25 years. I've traveled a lot.
Yeah.
And LA is the best place on the planet. So I'm not convincing you.
I thought you were going to say, and it's great to experience other cities. And you said, literally, don't leave. I've left before. It was awful.
No, I'm so excited for you to go on and explore new things, but there is no place on the planet like LA.
My family's here, so I'll be around. I'll be around.
No, thank you very much, and good luck with your new in your new position, in your new career, and we'll always be waiting here for you in LA, or I'll see you in New York.
Yes. We'll always have a place to stay, and then we'll see a show after.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It's always a pleasure to spend time with Dr. T. She's just this heart and soul and love and so much. She has all of this to offer.